Men of Reddit, what struggles come with dating a very rich girl? Story 1. Let me tell you a story that I think provides a nice contrast to most of the comments here. This story isn't mine, but that of a close friend's brother. So, Joe went away to college and met Sarah halfway through freshman year. They were on and off for a few months before deciding to date seriously in junior year. They met each other's families during vacations or when their parents came to visit them at school. By all accounts, Sarah's family was polite, kind, and fairly laid back. No arrogance or pretension whatsoever. Fast forward to the end of senior year. Joe's paternal grandfather was on his deathbed, and Joe desperately wanted to go say goodbye. The problem was they attended school in a small town with only a private airport, think Cessnas, and the nearest major airport was several hours away by car. Neither of them had a car, and even then there was no direct flight. It would have taken nearly 24 hours for Joe to reach the hospice center. This was devastating for him, as his grandfather had essentially been a second father. Without a word, Sarah pulled Joe into a cab and took him to the airport. Waiting there was her family's private plane. Joe, and my friend's whole family, were stunned. They had absolutely no idea Sarah's family was wealthy, let alone private jet wealthy. Joe was able to say goodbye, then flew coach back to school. Sarah never mentioned it again, and neither did Joe. They're now married, both successful in their careers, and from all appearances live a pretty normal life. But every once in a while, they vanish off to some remote island, jungle, or mountain for a few days each year, telling only their families where they're going. Story 2. Admitting financial struggles. When my wife and I were dating in university, her family invited me to their cottage during the break between Christmas and New Year's to ski, skate, and enjoy the snow. I wanted to go, but I didn't know how to ski and had no outdoor clothing suitable for the snow, no ski jacket, pants, or boots. I declined the invitation, but my then girlfriend was really sad and asked why. I had to admit I didn't have the gear and couldn't afford it. She told her family, and when I visited them on Christmas Day, they led me into a room where 3 sets of everything, brand new with tags, were laid out on a bed for me to choose from. It was a wonderful gesture, and I truly appreciated it. But I also had mixed feelings because I felt like a charity case. Another challenge was managing my wife's expectations around travel and activities for our kids. She grew up jetting off on trips whenever they felt like it and had her own horses. That's simply not an option for us. We do fine and we're happy, but horses just aren't financially realistic. Story 3. I guess my experience was a bit different from most. We worked together, and you'd never know she was rich unless you really got to know her. She worked just for fun, to stay busy and meet new people. She never looked at price tags, wore a $5,000 watch, and had Dolce & Gabbana glasses she'd break at least once a month because she was clumsy. She was very humble, very sweet, and probably the hardest worker there. We were both managers. The problem was that there was absolutely nothing we could do together that was new to her. She had more money and free time than I could ever match, and by 22, she had already checked off her entire bucket list. There was nothing I could offer within my, I don't know, realm? Ability? Nothing that felt new or exciting for her. We actually got along really well, and I later found out from a mutual friend that she was thrilled to be with someone who wasn't using her or groveling, because she was fuck you levels of rich. Looking back, I think it was my pride that ruined it, not anything she did. I struggled with letting her pay for everything, and I couldn't handle the fact that I couldn't show her anything she hadn't already seen. I stopped being fun because I felt like I had to constantly wow or impress her. She was perfectly happy just doing normal things, but it wasn't enough for me. I had to impress her. We lost contact years ago. I hope she's doing well. She was absolutely amazing and deserves to be happy. Story 4. My wife is very well off. She's a super successful doctor. She makes enough money that I don't have to work. When we started dating, I was a single father living in my parents' basement. I can say this with complete honesty. If someone is a good person, their money doesn't matter. The people with bad experiences dating rich women didn't have bad experiences because those women were rich. They had bad experiences with crappy people who just happened to be rich. My wife has always been amazing. She never made me feel bad, always supported me, and helped me find a career where I thrived and succeeded. Her money has never been an issue in any way. She's my best friend, and the struggles we have are honestly perks. I get to fly first class to amazing places and stay in swanky hotels. I get to make her dinner and pack her lunches for work, since she works crazy hours sometimes. I also get tons of time for gaming and playing with my kid. We bought an incredible acreage, and I'll be retiring before 40 to take care of the property, her, and my son. Her family is kind, loving, hilarious, and super welcoming. They love my son as if he were their own. They adore how happy I make her and how much I take care of her. The only disagreements we've ever had are the normal fights every couple has now and then. Well, there is one thing. She sometimes forgets I don't make the same amount of money. So when I bought a new vehicle, she wanted something fancy while I just wanted something economical and probably used. We compromised with a new, but not flashy truck. She also spends more on a purse than I would on a used car, and I'll never be able to wrap my head around that. But I grew up dirt poor, like no toys and Spam for dinner, poor. So we just come from different worlds. Anyway, all this to say, if someone is a good person raised by good people, and if neither partner is insecure, there really are no issues. Just delightful perks you never expected. I've always had a thing for strong women, so her making more money than me never bothered me. I'm just incredibly proud of her, her passion, and her ambition, and of the fact that she chose me. I often joke that I'm living every 1960s girl's dream. She jokes back that she worked this hard so she could marry poor, if that's who she truly fell in love with. Story 5. Not the man, but the rich girl here. I hope you guys are interested in my story. I come from a family that worked their way up in the world and became very wealthy. Growing up, my parents had me and my sister working regular jobs, so we would learn the value of money, and it worked. Back then, I wasn't allowed to date until I turned 18, not that it mattered much since I was a nerd who preferred video games over real people. When I got older and things started to change, I was just starting college when I met a guy. He was very handsome and didn't seem to care who my family was. I was thrilled because most people only pretended to be my friends because of my background. That lasted until I met his parents. He came from a lower middle class family, and his parents were obsessed with what will the neighbors think. They were so excited about me that they started acting bizarre, buying a Mercedes they couldn't afford, splurging on clothes, expensive wines, and so on. After a few years, the guy himself just became unbearable. We moved into a very nice downtown condo, and he completely lost it. He maxed out his credit card on expensive watches, suits, and shoes. My dad even got him a job at a good company, and I guess he thought he was a big shot now. I left him about 6 months later because he was trying to turn me into a trophy wife. He would get upset if I didn't have makeup on or if I spent the day gaming in my PJs, because what if someone knocked on the door and saw you like that? When I left, I was still paying for the condo he was living in. His parents started harassing me about their son's future and tried to manipulate me into going back. But I'm not that stupid. I tried to get him to buy me out of the condo, but he refused. It turned into a massive legal fight, and it was awful. Story 6. I was never completely sure how rich she was. I just knew her family owned property in a couple of places in the US and China. That's also how I found out property in China is insanely expensive. When she went home for the holidays, if she wanted to spend time in Shanghai and then head to Beijing later, she didn't need to look for hotels or Airbnbs. She just had to grab the right set of keys. It was surreal. She wasn't flashy, didn't wear head-to-toe designer, and drove a small fuel-efficient car, but seeing the number of apartments and houses her family owned, I can only imagine. She was such a sweet, down-to-earth girl. Biggest heart in the world, incredibly hardworking, and she approached life like a kid in a candy shop. Honestly, the biggest strain came when it came to food. Money was tight for me, and the best way to stretch my college scholarship was cooking in bulk. Before she met me, she ate out literally every single meal. At first, it took some adjusting and rebudgeting. But bless her, she understood and worked with me to find compromises. She loved my cooking and would surprise me with groceries, telling me my payment was to cook whatever she wanted. Every once in a while she'd cover the entire bill when we were supposed to split, but she always did it in a way that didn't make me feel bad. She never bought me expensive gifts either. Most were handmade or incredibly thoughtful. One time, she noticed I had been eyeing a pair of shoes online for months but couldn't afford them, and she got them for me. I miss that girl. I really hope she's doing well. Story 7. Meeting the people she knows is tough. It's hard to talk about my average life when my audience is a collection of some of the most gifted, driven, and accomplished people I've ever come across. For example, the first friend she introduced me to, one had temporarily left healthcare, traveled the world making a documentary, and then spent 6 months delivering medical care in a developing country, returning just weeks before we met. The other had gone into sports journalism and was already quickly climbing the ranks at one of the most reputable newspapers in the country. After hearing them swap stories about their incredible experiences, it was my turn. And there I was, trying to make. I fixed up a rental property and spent 4 hours a night studying every day for the past couple of months. Sound remotely interesting? It's like this almost every time. Theoretical physicists, accomplished athletes, artists, medical students, and professionals. And then there's me. A glorified white van guy with aspirations in a field I should have studied 7 years earlier, instead of going straight into the workforce with a forklift license. Story 8. I dated several. The hardest part was being rejected by one girlfriend's dad as an unserious boyfriend. Her father was one of the most successful bankers on Wall Street. Crazy rich, like $100 million a year rich. I never really understood what true wealth looked like until I stepped out of the elevator into their 2-story Park Avenue apartment, complete with a sweeping grand staircase, wraparound balconies on both floors, and artwork that honestly belonged in the Louvre. That level of rich. On our third date, her dad pulled me aside and flat out told me I wasn't a real candidate for his daughter. He said she would only marry someone suitable, and if I was trying to climb the social ladder by dating her, it would backfire, because he'd make sure of it. That was the only conversation I ever had with him. The second girlfriend made the first one look poor. She literally lived in a castle and had access to family homes, private jets, and islands all over the world. Yes, her family owned actual private islands. The worst part was that nothing I could do ever felt special. She was kind about it, and always told me to save my money, not to take her out to restaurants she knew I couldn't afford. She'd say she'd rather just have takeout at home than go somewhere that would stretch my budget. She meant it sincerely and tried to make me feel better, but it didn't change the fact that I could never, ever be the guy who swept her off her feet. On Valentine's Day, her ex once sent her 20 dozen long-stem roses. I could never book a hotel on my budget that came close to the ones she was used to, places like the Peninsula, the One and Only, the Ritz-Carlton, or the Plaza Athénée. I couldn't buy her clothes either, obviously. As much as she tried to reassure me it didn't matter, deep down it did. It always did. I also realized that if we ever got serious, I'd probably end up working in something related to her family and never truly be my own man. Even now, as an older guy, I look back and recognize the emotional barrier that kind of wealth disparity creates. It was massive, and honestly, we would have been doomed from the start. Story 9. My girlfriend is 26 and has over $7 million, with even more tied up in investments. I bring in about $300 a week, and honestly, we dated for a good 6 months before I had any idea just how wealthy she really was. When she was 1 year old, she was in a car accident, and her car seat left her paralyzed. After a lawsuit, she was awarded a massive settlement that paid out in full when she turned 18. Since then, she's been investing her money in various companies. It can get a little awkward when she wants to take big, expensive trips, but we find a way to manage. The moment I actually learned the extent of her wealth was pretty ridiculous. One morning, she bet me I wouldn't walk out of our room with my dick sticking out of a tear in my boxers while her friend was visiting. I told her, "I'll do it if you take me to Disneyland." She hates Disneyland. She said she'd take us for 2 days. I thought she was joking, so after I went through with it and sent her male friend screaming, she immediately started Googling resorts and hotels. We never ended up going, because I assumed it was all part of the joke. Later, we finally had a real talk about how much money she actually had. Looking back, I probably should have pieced it together sooner, but at the time I just didn't realize the scale of it. She doesn't like people knowing how wealthy she is, which is why she kept it a secret from me for so long. She's an amazing woman. She speaks French, Spanish, Arabic, and a little Russian. She's worked with a nonprofit that came up with a brilliant wheelchair brake system, and she's even helping me get a book edited and published through her network of connections. Story 10. I dated a woman for 5 years who used to spend $100,000 a month at Neiman Marcus. I grew up in the hood, managed to get out, and our paths crossed at my old job. She was probably the most attractive woman I'd ever been with, and on top of that, she had money. We traveled in style, And she really opened my eyes to how wealthy people think when it comes to saying yes to opportunities and not feeling guilty about success. But aside from that, it felt like we lived on two completely different planets. Sometimes I felt like she would bring me around her wealthy friends, almost as if I were a zoo exhibit. Look at my poor pet from the hood you've all heard about in the news. That's how it felt at times. The job where we met paid poorly, and I stayed there for 4 years. She was more than happy to cover everything, but after a while it got frustrating because she automatically paid for everything. I wanted to contribute. In the last year of our relationship, I landed a new job that quadrupled my income. Instead of celebrating, she kind of freaked out. She thought I didn't need her anymore and assumed I'd only been with her for the money. Most likely because that's the way her relationships with wealthy men had always worked. But that wasn't the truth. We loved each other, and I wanted her to understand that's not how real relationships are. Later, I found out how difficult her childhood had been and realized she never really knew what it meant to be loved unconditionally. I think that's also why she loved me so much, because I was the first person who loved her for who she was, not her money, not her circumstances, not for any other shallow reason. Being with her was probably the best 5 years of my life, but ultimately, we had to go our separate ways. Story 11. I've dated 2 girls who came from very wealthy families. The first was when I was 20 and she was 18. At that age, the biggest issue was that she was incredibly spoiled. She was so used to getting everything her way that resolving conflicts was basically impossible. Her whole circle of rich friends also had zero concept of the value of money. She couldn't even understand why I didn't want to go to a private school. Like, I wasn't interested in graduating with $200,000 in debt just for a diploma. The second relationship was with a girl from an even richer family. They were very accepting of me and my background, and I got to experience some amazing things with them while they understood I couldn't contribute equally. In that relationship, though, her family's wealth clouded my judgment for a while. We both had good jobs, moved in together, and lived a fun lifestyle. But the truth was, I wasn't really in love with her. It took me longer to break things off than it should have because the idea of being set for life if we got married was tempting. In the end, I chose to be honest with myself. Now I'm very happily married and poor. Funny enough, that second breakup showed me how shallow people can be. When I told one of my friends, his first reaction was literally, "Why would you do that? She's pretty and really rich." Story 12. I'm best friends with a rich girl who doesn't realize she's rich, which seems to be a running theme in this thread. She's not multi-billionaire, private jet, 16 houses, she's never seen rich. More like, her parents are multi-millionaires, they fly business class, and they own 3 houses, one of which I, as her friend, have never even been to. She's super chill, and, being a good friend, I always tease her about being rich while she insists she isn't. For example, we'll be on the phone. "Shut up, I'm not rich." "Where are you right now?" "I'm in Wainimi." "Right. You're telling me you're not rich from your beach house. Did you drive the Mercedes there or the Rolls Royce?" "Shut up. I took my Corolla. The 2019 all-electric one you paid cash for, right?" "Yeah, that one. What's your point?" This conversation also happened. "Hey, are you coming to the thing on the 18th? I need a head count." "Sorry, no. I'll be in Africa. We both live in Southern California. Africa's a bit of a drive." And then a year later. "So, the 17th? Yes or no?" "Shit, I thought it was the week before. I'll be in Europe." "Wait, really? Where in Europe?" "Spain, Portugal, France, Germany, England, Italy, San Marino, and Monaco. Oh, and Holland. I'll be gone for 6 weeks. And you're not rich, right?" "Shut up. I am not rich." She's a great friend. Totally out of touch with what not rich actually means, but still, a great friend. Story 13. A disconnect about what sharing really means and why it matters. Very early on, we moved in together, and besides me having to hide my stuff when I was there, one story really stands out. I bought a case of beer, a 2 to 4 for my fellow Ontarians, and put it in the fridge because we had some guests coming over for dinner. These were university days, so nobody was well off by any means. I had a high-paying summer job, so I was more than happy to share a bit of what I had. Everyone who came over could grab a few beers, and I was glad to provide. At the end of the night, though, she was upset. She finally asked me, "Why did you give all our beer away?" She didn't even drink beer. She had all the wine in the world. I was shocked. I explained my reasoning, but she was still angry. Honestly, that should have been a red flag. And the truth is, this behavior never really changed. I stuck it out for 7 years, and I genuinely regret trying to make it work. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.